So recently one of the members of my athletic bodybuilding private community mentioned that Jeffrey Nippard released a quad exercise tier list. And because you guys seem to enjoy these videos, I'll be going over Jeffrey Nippard's quad exercise tier list so you know which exercises you should and shouldn't add to your leg day routine. Before I get started with the video, I'm excited to announce that I just started one-on-one coaching. So if you're looking to work with me directly, now you can. With one-on-one coaching, not only will you get direct access to me, but you'll get custom workout and nutrition plans to help you reach your goals, whether it's an aesthetic goal or an athletic performance goal. But if one-on-one coaching really isn't your thing, you can check out my 90-day aesthetic body blueprint, or if you're more focused on athletic performance, check out my 120-day peak athleticism package. Both of these will be in the description.
Let's see, squat combination exercises like the squat plus press and the lunge plus curl are going straight to F tier. That's because your quads are way stronger than your shoulders or your arms, so your upper body is always going to fatigue well before your quads.
Combo exercises, easy F tier. Combo exercises are obviously pretty stupid as the stronger muscle group will have to sacrifice for the weaker muscle group. It's like I can barbell squat over 3 plates, but my max shoulder press is a little over 1 plate on each side. So if I do a combo military press and squat, I'll only be able to use 1 plate, so I'm not even gonna get close to failure on my squats. So if your goal is hypertrophy or power or even strength, you should never be doing combo exercises.
Bosu ball squats are so bad, I didn't even film them. The problem is, because they're so unstable, your ankle ends up doing a lot of the stabilization work, and that severely limits the amount of tension that your quads receive. They might have some utility in some athletic contexts, but for building muscle, Bosu ball squats are going straight to F tier.
Bosu ball squat, another terrible exercise, easy F tier. So many people think I love Bosu ball exercises just because I don't like machines, but super unstable exercises like a Bosu ball squat are pretty stupid, especially for strength, power, and hypertrophy. Mr. Nippard's claiming that this exercise could be beneficial for athletes shows he knows nothing about athletic performance. When it comes to stability, I like to separate them into 2 extremes. One being super stable like machines, and another being super unstable like Bosu ball exercises. And both of these are not ideal, especially because daily activities and sports skills are probably right in the middle, which is just ground-based free weight exercises, which is about moderate stability. When it comes to sports, because again, Jeffrey mentioned that this could be beneficial for athletes for some reason, when you play basketball, when you play soccer, when you're fighting in MMA, are you doing it on a freaking Bosu ball or anything unstable like a Bosu ball? No, you're doing it on a court, on a mat, or on the field. And when it comes to training for sports, you want to try and replicate the environment. But since Jeffrey's video is more focused on hypertrophy, it's stupid for that as well. Instability devices are pretty much only used for rehab purposes, and as I mentioned earlier, they're not recommended for strength, power, or hypertrophy. So many idiots online think that stability training is unstable surfaces when it's really not. It's actually fast plyometrics and heavy unilateral exercises.
Barbell back squat. Well, let's see. It offers high tension on the quads deep in the hole when they're most stretched. They should feel good, especially once you lock in your bar path, and they might be one of the best exercises for progressive overload, period. You can always add a little weight or a rep each week as you gain size and strength. Now, because it's a free weight squat, your spinal erectors will have to do some stabilization, but that's not a deal breaker in my opinion. Your quads are still the prime movers, and if you need any proof that squats can build some monster quads, just go to a powerlifting meet. Some anatomy enjoyers will point out that the rectus femoris head is not maximally activated by the squat because, unlike the other 3 heads, it's shortening at the knee while lengthening at the hip. This is true. However, studies still show pretty solid rectus femoris growth with squats, and as long as you include one other exercise in your program that we'll get to, this concern completely goes away. So while the mild anatomy concern almost pulls it back to A tier, I just can't take the barbell back squat out of S tier without a guilty conscience.
Hey, I'm surprised Jeffrey Nippard put this as S tier. And if you watch my videos frequently, you'll know that I absolutely agree with him. Back squat is S tier. The barbell back squat has to be the king of all leg exercises, if not all exercises in general. This exercise is a great way to load up the quads, glutes, and adductors, and it's very functional to the balance, core, and stability demand, and unlike a Bosu ball squat, it's actually a very realistic level of stability. The combination of this exercise providing great leg development, improving core strength, and having great transferability outside the gym makes the barbell back squat an easy S tier.
The barbell front squat has all the same upsides of the barbell back squat, except it actually shifts even more tension to the quads. That's because where the barbell center of mass is shifted forward in front of your neck, you're forced to keep a more upright posture so you don't fall over. This increases the moment arm to the knee joint, placing more tension on the quads. That said, the forward bar position will also force your upper back to work harder, and some coaches will argue that this causes your upper back to become the limiting factor. I don't fully agree. Unless you're going super heavy, you really should be able to keep your elbows up, and you should be able to get your quads close to failure without your back giving out first. Now, front squats will lose a few points in the feels good department for some of you. I'm gonna put these in A tier because despite activating the quads a bit more, I find enough people just hate doing them or find the bar position awkward, and I don't think there's enough of a tension shift to trump that.
Wow, that's actually a really base take. Jeffrey Nipples is really surprising me here. I agree 100%. I think the front squat is A tier. The front squat is a great squat variation to add more emphasis on the quads. The issue with the front squat is there's typically a greater core demand that many lifters have an issue with, and many people find them quite uncomfortable. So the combination of these two things and the fact that I find them a little bit harder to load up than the barbell back squat makes front squats not quite S tier, but A tier.
Okay, so we've covered a high bar back squat and a front squat. What about a low bar back squat? For a low bar squat, you shift the barbell down 2 or 3 inches so it sits on your rear delts instead of your upper traps. And research shows that while this technique will allow you to load more total weight, it actually shifts some of the tension away from your quads and onto your glutes. This isn't a complete deal breaker though, because you still see extremely high quad activity as long as you're squatting to a reasonable depth. Low bar squats are going in A tier as well.
Low bar squat, A tier for Jeffrey. I don't quite agree with this take. The difference between a low bar back squat and a high bar back squat is that the low bar back squat will have greater emphasis on the hip extensors. And this is not necessarily a bad thing, but I use squats as my quad builder and not necessarily my glute builder. And some of you may be saying, well, isn't it okay for me to do both squat variations? And I would say, yeah, but when it comes to a barbell back squat, I really think you should master one of the variations. For guys, I would have to put low bar squat as C tier. As if you're trying to hit your glutes more, I would just do a thrust variation or do some sort of glute focused lunge. And if you're one of my huge female audience members, I would put the low bar squat as A tier just because girls seem to focus more on glute development, so some sort of glute focused squat would be very beneficial for their aesthetics.
The hack squat is a long-time bodybuilding staple and it ticks all the same boxes as the barbell squat, plus it has a few extra benefits. You can generally get your sets done a bit faster because there's less setup. You'll be a bit more locked in, meaning less stabilization work and potentially more direct quad tension. And you can play with your foot position to find a comfortable spot without worrying about your balance. Contrary to popular belief, the latest science shows that on average, free weights and machines can both build muscle roughly equally as long as you're pushing your sets hard. This is truly a brilliant quad builder, and it's obviously going in S tier.
How did this dude just go over how a squat will build the same amount of muscle as a hack squat and still put the hack squat as S tier? Makes no sense. Obviously, the hack squat and barbell squat will target the same muscles, but the hack squat significantly lowers the core balance and stability demand that you would get from a barbell squat. And while tons of soy boy bodybuilders will say that's a good thing, it's really a very bad thing. As Jeffrey just showed, it doesn't have a hypertrophic benefit, and it will just lead to decreased transferability of this exercise to daily activities or, most importantly, sports skills. So essentially, a hack squat is just a barbell squat with less functionality and athletic benefits. So it really doesn't make sense to me why you would choose this over a barbell squat. This may sound pretty harsh, but I'll have to put a hack squat in D tier. I usually put machines in C tier, as if you're doing the free weight counterparts, I can see them having a place in your routine. But if you're doing your fair share of free weight squats and lunges, you'll be good on glute development, and the exercise is just very repetitive to a barbell squat.
Pendulum squat is similar to the hack squat, except the weight moves up and down in an arc. I actually find this resistance path feels more natural than the linear hack squat, so these movements just keep getting better and better. That said, most gyms don't have a pendulum squat, so not everyone will be able to do it. I still think it belongs in S tier though.
So obviously Jeffrey put a hack squat in S tier because he's a soy boy. For the same reasons as to why I put the hack squat in D tier, I'll put the pendulum squat in C tier. The reason why I'm putting this exercise in C tier and not D tier is because of the resistance path. It's a little bit more unique than a squat, so I can see you adding this into your routine occasionally.
The Smith machine squat seems to be a bit more accepted now than it was 4 or 5 years ago, especially as more top bodybuilders gravitate to it. I think the best thing about the Smith machine is that you can actually push your quads close to or to failure without that same fear of falling over or needing to dump the bar. And other than potentially reduced stabilizer involvement, it really is the same basic movement pattern as the free weight barbell squat. And so for hypertrophy, it also has to go in S tier.
Dude needs to quit spamming S tier. The logic here makes no sense. A Smith machine squat will build the same amount of muscle as a barbell squat, but you'll get decreased functionality and athletic benefits. So how are you putting this on the same level as a barbell squat? I find the Smith machine squat worse than the hack squat and pendulum squat, as it's so repetitive to a barbell squat. It's pretty crazy, and if you're doing both, it's just very repetitive. It's not quite F tier for me, so I'll put the Smith machine squat in D tier.
Let's move on to the 45-degree leg press. Since you're also flexing and extending the knee, the quads will of course receive high tension. However, I do find that a lot of leg presses don't allow me to get as deep as I can get on a squat. Again, as far as hypertrophy is concerned, the deeper you can get, the better. So if you're not able to get your calves to your glutes, you might not be getting as much out of a leg press as you would out of a deep squat. Outside of that though, leg presses do generally feel good, and they are good for overload. I'm gonna put them in A tier.
Leg press A tier, I don't agree with this. He has a weird complaint about the leg press as he isn't able to go as deep as other squat variations. But when it comes to quad development in particular, this is a stupid claim. Because first of all, idiots go super deep, it just looks freaking stupid. And when it comes to quad growth, I've mentioned this in multiple videos, but recent research shows that if you get at least 90 degrees of knee flexion, going any deeper won't lead to more quad growth. Going deep on squats is beneficial for glute and adductor growth, but since this is a quad video, I don't know why he mentioned that he has to go super deep because he didn't even mention glute and adductor growth. Although I typically prefer closed chain leg exercises, I actually do kind of like that this is an open chain leg exercise, as at least it differs from the squat a little bit more than the other leg machines. I'm kind of in between C and D tier, but I'll be nice and put this at C tier.
Horizontal leg press is worse in my opinion because they almost always have even more limited range of motion. So it'll be harder to get high tension in the deep stretch, and once your legs get decently strong, you'll probably max out the machine, which means overload is going to be more limited for intermediate to advanced lifters. The horizontal leg press is going in C tier.
Just like Jeffrey, I'm not a big fan of the horizontal leg press. It loses the benefit of what a standard leg press gains, which is the fact that it's more different from a squat, so I have to put this exercise in D tier.
The lunge is a better glute builder than it is a quad builder in my experience, even though it will grow both. You get some stretch and some tension on the quads, but not as much as you get on the glutes. They do feel good, but if you're doing them right, you should feel your glutes more than your quads. You can get the quads more involved by taking more shallow steps, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think they're best utilized and best thought of as a glute builder. As a quad exercise, they're going in B tier.
Lunge is B tier. I do respect that, but I think it should be a little bit better. I don't know why he says that he thinks the lunge is a glute exercise. I really don't see it like that. I don't see the lunge as a glute or quad exercise. I just see it as a movement that hits both the glutes and quads. This is beneficial for me because I personally structure my leg workouts based on movements and not muscles, so the other way might help you a little bit more if you're more focused on muscles. Lunges are super important as unilateral leg training is essential, as the majority of leg movements in real life and sports are done on one leg. And you also get the added benefit of fixing and preventing any muscular imbalances. I think it's pretty stupid that he grouped all lunge variations together instead of dividing them up by variation, but oh well. When it comes to free weight lunge variations, I'd have to put them in S tier. But when it comes to machine lunge variations, I'd have to put it in D tier because it's pretty dumb. One of the main benefits of unilateral exercises is the added balance and stability demand that you have to overcome. So doing it on a machine just completely wipes out that benefit, which is just so ridiculous to me.
The leg extension. This is a surprisingly controversial one. Some people say that they're bad for your knees, but this has been thoroughly debunked. But the great thing about the leg extension is that your hips are fixed. This means that unlike squat-based exercises, your rectus femoris will actually stretch and contract here. This makes it the first exercise where all four heads of the quads will be highly engaged. Assuming you're leaning back and you've got a machine that stretches your quads well, I think they're good enough to get into A tier. They don't have quite the same overload potential as squats do, and even though some studies do show similar leg growth between leg extensions and squats, those are short-term studies, and I'm just frankly doubtful that doing leg extensions will net you the same quad gains as doing squats over the long term.
Wow, another base take. I thought he was going to put leg extensions in S tier. So many bodybuilders love the leg extension, but I really don't like the exercise very much. The reasons why I don't like the leg extension very much is because it's an open chain leg exercise when most activities are closed chain. It takes the core out of the movement, and it trains the quads in isolation, which is just not very realistic. I personally never use leg extensions because if you're doing a free weight squat and lunge variation, which you should be doing, you'll be getting enough quad volume to where it's not really necessary to add leg extensions at the end. That being said, if you're lacking rectus femoris growth or you're looking for some extra quad work at the end of your workout, I can see it having its place, so I'll put the leg extension in C tier.
The reverse Nordic is the same basic movement pattern as a leg extension, except they have the added benefit of being more accessible. You don't need a leg extension machine to do them. You can also get a much deeper stretch on your quads here. The slight negative though is that they are really tough, meaning beginners might struggle with them, and they can be hard to overload with weight, so you're a bit more limited on your overload options. You can still add a rep each week though, or try to get a bit deeper, and because the stretch is S tier on these, and they're so accessible, I'm gonna put them in A tier overall.
I actually see where Jeffrey's coming from here, and he's actually surprising me. I actually like reverse Nordics more than leg extensions because you're using the quads very uniquely, and the core is being involved to some some degree, and you guys know I love core involvement in all my exercises. The issues with this exercise is that it's difficult to perform and progress on, which is why I have to put this exercise in B tier.
Goblet squats are biomechanically very similar to a barbell front squat, so they will highly activate your quads, but because you have to hold a dumbbell in your hands, they're actually a lot harder to overload. Once your quads get decently strong, you'll be able to squat a lot more weight than you'll be able to comfortably hold. So the goblet squat will quickly be limited to high rep sets only. These days, I generally only use it in two contexts: for teaching the squat to beginners and as a high rep finisher exercise. These are just okay for me, and I'm putting them in C or B tier. I guess B tier, since they definitely can have their place.
I agree with Jeffrey again here. Maybe me and him agree on way more than I thought we did. I do like how the goblet squat is a free weight squat movement, but I agree with Jeffrey that it's very hard to load up, and if I'm looking for a more quad dominant squat exercise, I would be doing a front squat or a zerker squat. Whenever I do use goblet squats, I'll use them at the end of my workouts when my legs are a little bit more fatigued, so I don't have to grab such heavy weight. I still think it can have a place in your workout routine, so I'll put it in B tier.
Jump squats will burn some calories, and they aren't terrible for building explosive power, but as a muscle builder, there are just too many other better options out there that'll provide more tension and more overload. I'm not a fan of these for hypertrophy, so they're going in F tier.
Yeah, jump squat's an easy F tier. I really don't know why he's adding this exercise into this tier list, because obviously it's a plyometric exercise, but yeah, plyometrics are obviously not great for muscle growth, or else we'd see bodybuilders jumping out the gym.
Bulgarian split squats are brutal, but they sure do work. You'll get a huge stretch on your quads, and doing each leg unilaterally can be very helpful for preventing any left to right muscle imbalances. But because they're so fatiguing and psychologically challenging, I usually only program 2 sets of these per workout. Your quads will get more sore doing these than on almost any other exercise, and while soreness isn't a one-to-one predictor of hypertrophy, in this case, I think it is a good indication that you're hitting the right muscle. I'm putting Bulgarian split squats in S tier.
Oof, he scared me for a second. I thought he wasn't gonna put Bulgarian split squats in S tier. I do agree with Jeffrey that Bulgarian split squats are very fatiguing, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's an amazing exercise. Split squats do fall under the lunge movement, and since I put lunges in S tier, you already know that Bulgarian split squats are an easy S tier.
Deadlifts do activate the quads, but not nearly as much as squats do. That's not surprising when you look at the side view. As far as the quads are concerned, a deadlift is basically a quarter squat. You'll get a bit more quad involvement if you deadlift with a sumo stance, but they still don't hold a candle to squats for quad growth. They're a much better glute builder, and they're an excellent overall strength builder, but for quadriceps and muscle growth, deadlifts are going in C tier.
Kinda dumb to include a deadlift in a quad exercise tier list because it is a hinge movement, but it does hit the quads to some degree, so I guess it kinda makes sense. I would have to put deadlifts as S tier if I was more focused on hitting the hip extensors and trying to build overall strength, but when it comes to quad development, I'll have to put the deadlift in D tier. Again, the deadlift is a fantastic exercise, but if I'm trying to hit my quads, why would I be doing a deadlift? I'd obviously be doing some sort of squat or lunge. It's kind of like someone giving you barbell rows to build your biceps. Will it hit your biceps and grow your biceps to some degree? Yeah. Is it ideal if you're specifically trying to grow your biceps? No.
Step-ups are equally not fun as Bulgarian split squats, but also less effective because you get less quad stretch, and they're less stable. They do offer a pretty solid glute stimulus though, especially if you avoid lifting off your back foot, and they can have their place, but overall, I'm feeling C tier on these.
Step up C tier. I do agree with Jeffrey again here. I'm super surprised because I've actually been agreeing with him a lot in this video. Step ups are a great exercise, but for quad development, I wouldn't be using them because they're more for glute development. It's kind of the same logic with the deadlift. If I'm trying to hit your quads, would I be picking a step up? No, I'd be selecting a more quad dominant lunge variation. But step ups do still hit your quads pretty well, so I'll put it in C tier.
Pistol squats are an impressive movement if you can do them, but the lack of stability and overload limitations knock them down quite a bit for me. If you're limited to at-home workouts or bodyweight training, I think they're great, but assuming you have gym access, there are just so many better options. I'm gonna put pistol squats in C tier as a quad builder.
Pistol squat C tier. I don't quite agree with him on this one, but I do see where he's coming from. I do like how unique the pistol squat is, and it's a very unique squat variation. But due to how difficult it is to learn and load up, it doesn't quite rank as good as other squat movements and other unilateral exercises like lunges. I'm in between B and C tier, but I'll be nice and put this one in B tier.
Sissy squats are similar to reverse Nordics in that they get a huge stretch on your quads, and don't let the name deceive you, these are very challenging. That said, they're a bit harder to load, so I find I'm mainly limited to adding reps when it comes to progressive overload, and I find that they have more of a learning curve than the other squat options. People can also find it awkward going up onto their toes and getting their knees all the way forward, but if you can get the technique down, I do think they're probably the best squat option for getting into a super deep stretch on the quads. So despite some limitations, I'm feeling A or B tier on these. I do find them a bit awkward though, so let's go with B tier.
Sissy Squat, B tier. I do agree with Jeffrey here, but for different reasons. I do like how the Sissy Squat is a unique squat variation, but just like the pistol squat, it is pretty hard to learn and load up on. I also think the stretch and the exercise in general is super overrated by fitness influencers today, but I still think it's a decent exercise, so I'll put it in B tier.
And if I had to crown just one exercise as the best of the best for quad growth, I think I'd have to go with a hack squat.
See, I was really proud of Jeffrey because we did agree on a lot in this video, and then he put the hack squat as the best exercise out of all these quad exercises. The hack squat is just a worse version of the barbell squat, as they will build the same amount of muscle in your legs, but the squat has the added functionality and athletic benefits. So that's my quad exercise tier list. Let me know in the comments what you agree and disagree with, and if you haven't already, check out the other tier list that I took a look at.